Hello, lovelies. Today I would like to take a look at the 2013 film The Nun, or La Religieuse, which to my understanding is a remake of the 1966 film. This is of course based on a novel. I have yet to watch the original film as well as read the book, which I eventually would like to revisit with you, but I did enjoy this film. It's, to my understanding, just kind of more a very ahead of its time, but a social commentary on the effects of a person's life, whether mentally or otherwise, being forced into a religious or confined life, something that they do not want, as well as having to deal with these imposed restrictions or punishments, penance, correction, that comes along with a religious lifestyle. So it explores all of this, and in my opinion, yes, I feel it was very ahead of its time. If you're familiar with the original film, or if you've read the book, I don't know if you would or would not agree with me, but that's what I took from this. But this is the story of a young girl named Suzanne. I believe the film starts when she is 16 years old, and it's at a recital in her home where she is playing the harpsichord. A young man takes an interest in her, and she confesses to her mother, well, I'm not interested in this young man, and honestly, I'm in love with God. And you do get notes of regret at her having said this. We later find out that a secret her mother kept, but her mother had a tryst with another man, and she is the product of an extramarital affair. So even if, say, because she's now basically improper to be married off, and without being married and having a husband of her own, without any sort of protection or property, it's implied that she would basically have to fight with her own sisters later when the time comes at her parents' passing, that she probably wouldn't get a dime, and the best thing for her is to remain in the convent. So initially, because of course that was the last straw, Mom just basically had to give her this bad news, and I imagine that Mom just really didn't want to. I mean, who would, especially, what was this? The film was set in 1765, to my understanding. No one really wants to admit to that, especially to their own daughter. And they did try to go things about properly. They try to coerce her into staying at the convent, completing her novitiate, completing her final vows, and she originally had relented. She made it all the way to the final ceremony when she was to take her vows, and she just confesses and says, no, I do not want this. But initially the priest just kind of turns a mute ear and just kind of tries to get her to go through with this. She is very set on just not being forced into something she does not want, and who would, seriously. Earlier, before she even made it this far, not only did the Reverend Mother try to encourage her, her sisters visited and tried to encourage her, and ultimately she relented and agreed to go with this thing that she did not want. So of course we make it to the day of the ceremony, and she just can't do it. She does not want to, and she returns home. This is where we get the sad news that, well, you know what, you're just a child out of wedlock, and you really don't have much to look forward to. So yeah, I know, I got ahead of myself. I got my sequence of events out of order. Sorry about that. But yeah, the young girl went through a lot, and it's her first Reverend Mother at this home that just really did a lot for her. She was the surrogate mother. She made it easier for her to cope with and deal with the situation correction that she was dealing with. And it really wasn't until the young girl's return to the convent when she finally relents, and she's like, well, fine, I have nothing else to look forward to. So she relents, she returns to the convent, and somewhere through the course of this, the the Reverend Mother, it's really not quite understood whether she had been murdered by a woman who was unwell, or if the Reverend Mother, just kind of due to her own sadness, just committed suicide. It's open to speculation, but Suzanne takes this very harshly, and the new Reverend Mother is definitely a lot more strict. She's more into the whole penance, and, you know, brings back kind of like these, I don't really want to call them devices of torture, but she does reinstate certain practices that the original Reverend Mother had done away with, and Suzanne is just not having any of this. She's also having trouble with transitioning from the new Reverend Mother, who is just very, very strict, very cold. She's very rigid, and eventually she just kind of becomes very, very cruel towards Suzanne. It's not too long before she's ostracized, and of course the other nuns in the convent, having taken this example, they also kind of pick on her, and they're just nasty. They spit in her face. If she's washing a floor, they throw things on purpose to dirty it, so her task is just more tedious. Eventually it just reaches the pitch to where she's pretty much a prisoner. She's stripped of her nun garb, and very cruel and unusual restrictions are placed upon Suzanne. So, for example, she cannot pray. She cannot go to confession. We also later find out she has been prevented from bathing. So this poor girl has been over a month without having been able to properly clean and wash her body. She isn't even provided with a chamber pot, so she has to sneak out of her bedroom at night just to relieve herself. I mean, it's just very cruel and unusual conditions. She couldn't bear this life anymore, a religious life, which she never wanted to begin with. She pretty much just feels it was forced upon her, and I agree. But she takes it upon herself one evening to, I don't know if you would say steal supplies, but she takes a quill, an inkwell, some paper, and she fashions a letter or a confession, and she makes arrangements via a friend of hers to smuggle this paperwork out and get it to a lawyer, because she wants to break her vows. She wants to leave the convent. And that is pretty much why all of these, I really don't want to say penance, because it really has nothing to do with sin. She's just being punished. She's being tortured. But that's why all of this came upon her, which is absolute BS. But, you know, the new Reverend Mother, as cruel as she is, she has her reasons. Maybe she just feels that Suzanne has turned her back on her vocation, or her back on God. Who really knows? But eventually she is sent to another convent. So she does get some form of relief, and this place, even though she's treated better, isn't really much better for her. This new Reverend Mother is very strange. She's not only in love, but she's obsessed with Suzanne. She does very strange things, and it starts off as very, very innocent, whether or not it's her asking Suzanne to prove that she loves her just as much as the original Reverend Mother. She says, "Kiss me." Suzanne gives her a peck on the forehead. She doesn't really seem to understand all of this, obviously really not having anything to do with a man, and then just kind of being thrown into this sexual situation with a woman. This third Reverend Mother also later visits her bedchamber, crawls into bed, and asks to be warmed. I mean, it's all just kind of very odd, unwelcomed, unsolicited behavior. And Suzanne ultimately confesses this to a chaplain or a priest, and yeah, he advises her, just stay away from her, spend your nights praying in the chapel if you have to, just avoid this woman. And eventually, yeah, she does get out of out of this third convent. But it's interesting, the series of different quote-unquote mothers that Suzanne goes through, the nurturing, loving one, the original one, the elderly Reverend Mother, to the cruel and very harsh Reverend Mother, the replacement, and then the third Reverend Mother, the misguided or the unwanted love. It's all, it's very tragic. It's very, very sad on itself. And ultimately, when Suzanne is rescued out of this new convent, because arrangements had been made, the lawyer returns for her, and the chaplain agrees to give her a key so that she can let herself out the front gate and leave. But before she leaves, I love this ending statement. He says to her that the world needs more people like you, the fact that she rebelled against this life that was forced upon her. And he confesses to her that he was forced into his life as a religious man as well. It's not something that he wanted, and obviously he admires this woman's strength, this power of hers. And I don't know, I found it just very touching. But Suzanne is ultimately reunited with her birth father, who passes away, and I can only speculate that maybe for a time she would be safe, she would be taken care of. Eventually she would have to be married off, because in that time period it was not common, unfortunately, for a woman to remain unwed. So I don't know if as a wealthy woman, a woman of status, she would really be given that courtesy to just kind of in totality live her own life to her own liking as she pleases, or if her brother would make arrangements for her further, or some other sort of overseer of the estate. But I don't know, I really liked the message and the social commentary in this film. It really does speak, and it's very much relevant in this day and age. I mean, people are still being forced into vocations that they don't care for, whether it's religious or just, the family business, or who knows. But I mean, things like this still go on. It's not uncommon, it's not unheard of. And I think the subject matter itself is still very, very relevant today. That's my opinion. I mean, agree or disagree, but it still seems to have a very strong message, which is why I say I think the material, the novel itself, was very ahead of its time. If you guys have seen the original film or read the book, I would love to share thoughts with you. I eventually, like I said, I eventually do want to watch the original as well as read the book. But that is all I have for you guys for today, and I will talk to you later.